Hi, I'm Amanda Xavier. I'm a clinical psychologist in Malaysia, and I'm here today with Buro Malaysia to react to mental health portrayals in popular TV shows and films.
I can't. I can't. You acted like you cared about me, but you don't even respect me. And no one likes you. And you're going to end up alone, and you deserve it, because you're a superficial, selfish, and prejudiced person!
It's interesting to see that he was able to stop himself. And I think that's a very good indicator of the sort of justice system that autistic people have, actually. There's a very clear line between right and wrong, and that's usually how they make their decisions. But it seems like a pretty good portrayal because it's emotional. And I think that does come across as necessary to communicate that. Autism is different for everybody who has it. So his portrayal might be his character's version of autism. And we could have someone else with autism who doesn't have that at all. A pretty muted portrayal of emotions, actually, for autism. Could be bigger with meltdowns. And speaking of meltdowns, here's another clip from The Good Doctor.
So I'm going to give you one last chance to maintain your dignity.
I am a surgeon! I am a surgeon! I am a surgeon! I am a surgeon! Dr. Han, I am a surgeon!
Wow. I don't know if many people would notice this, but there seems to be so much more happening beneath the surface than what he's shown. He's got a bunch of lines, but you can tell from his facial expressions and his pauses that there's so much more underneath the surface, but what comes out is only that, right? And I think that's a very good example of how it's so difficult to communicate what they feel in a way that neurotypical people would understand. If you can see how people with autism communicate with people with autism, there are minimal misunderstandings most of the time, because there's an understanding that when they say things very directly, that this is important. It is important enough that this has come out the way it is, versus a lot of us neurotypicals, the way we communicate is a bit like Dr. Han, right? We take into account all the different things like organizational concerns, people above, the board members, all these kind of things that go into why we're talking about things. And we try to make it nice, we try to make it gentle, but this is actually a pretty informative portrayal that this is how it could look like if someone tries to communicate something that is really, really frustrating for them. And right now we're reacting to Silver Linings Playbook.
The fuck? But now Catherine's pregnant. Isn't that wonderful? She's pregnant.
All right. Yeah, so that was a very interesting scene, because the first thing that you'd notice is he finishes a book in one night. And right away, he tosses it out the window. So that's something that you can see in manic episodes where there's this impulsivity, there's a lot of emotions, as you can see, there's irritability, there's anger. You don't feel like you need to eat, you don't feel like you need to sleep. To get energy, you could survive for 3-4 days without sleeping or sleeping just 1 or 2 hours a night. Impulsive thing that also resulted in a bit of property destruction is, part of a manic episode. He already had the energy to finish the book. So he was probably in the midst of starting a manic episode. And that's where we started off this scene with. It's actually a pretty good scene. And throughout the movie, a pretty good portrayal of bipolar disorder. And right now I'll be reacting to Sherlock.
I think from now on we'll downgrade you to casual acquaintance, no more than 3 planned social encounters a year, and always in John's presence. I have your contact details. I will be monitoring.
They're right about you. You're a bloody psychopath.
High-functioning sociopath. With your number.
That's actually pretty scary if you see someone say he's a high-functioning sociopath and then give that smile. And interestingly, you would know with Sherlock that he doesn't smile just because things are amusing or just out of nothing. That probably was a very well-intentioned smile to scare the person sitting across from him. According to the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, sort of the psychology Bible, if you will, what we would diagnose someone with is antisocial personality disorder. And this is usually what is portrayed in media as psychopath because there's a blatant disregard for other people's rights, property damage, purposely doing cruel, degrading acts, and also a minimal or lack of empathy or remorse about this. Sociopaths still have a lack of empathy, lack of remorse, maybe also difficulty seeing from other people's point of view or just doing what they want, even if it might hurt someone else, but they don't purposely do criminal activity that violates other people's rights. So that's one of the main differences here, and probably what Sherlock was alluding to, that he's a high-functioning sociopath. So he can function in society, has all of these traits, but he does not, do what a psychopath does, which is most of the time criminal activity. And the next clip is from the movie Split.
All the doctors, besides Dr. Fletcher, say that we're the same person, just personalities. Huh? How do you explain I'm the only one that needs these, you motherfucker?
Oftentimes, in a lot of movies, when it becomes, very dramatized, very exciting to the audience, there is an interesting correlation between a disorder and crime. So his identity has been split into multiple different identities or personalities. And as we can see from one of the scenes there, usually this is a direct response to trauma or traumatic events in one's life. And for DID especially, it's usually very severe, very intense trauma, most of the time abuse or violence to the child. The brain sort of reacts in a way to hide the vulnerable side and come up with some identity that can protect the original Kevin. But there has been some case studies that show, especially with the diabetes, that is possible. Of course, very dramatized for Beast. They're climbing up the walls. I've not seen that in research yet, but I'm sure, this is a portrayal that's made to be terrifying, that there's a possibility that one of his identities is capable of murder and of becoming this almost superhuman creature. So I think what happens here is they try to take all of these aspects about a disorder, take the worst or the most exciting parts of it, make a character, and sell a movie. So it's important to just remember that while parts of how they portray DID is accurate, many parts are also not. It has been exaggerated for the movie. If we look at just the sort of front half of the movie, it's a pretty good example of what DID might look like if someone is pushed to the brink. But not everyone who is pushed to the brink will react like that. Most commonly, it actually results in suicide, not homicide. And now this clip is from The Big Bang Theory.
That's where I sit.
Sit next to me.
No, I sit there.
What's the difference?
What's the difference?
Here we go.
In the winter, that seat is close enough to the radiator to remain warm and yet not so close as to cause perspiration. In the summer, it's directly in the path of a cross breeze created by opening windows there. And there, it faces the television at an angle that is neither direct, thus discouraging conversation, nor so far wide as to create a parallax distortion.
This portrayal has been mentioned as part of his OCD, but as I'm looking at it and I can see sort of the history, the context of why that became his spot, it's not OCD, because I don't have any indication that there are obsessions or compulsions for him to maintain that spot. Instead, he goes through this explanation of how it's the best seat because of so many different factors, and the rigidity of having that seat as his for years is more a trait of autism.
Hold it! Penny's sleeping. Are you insane? You can't just break into a woman's apartment in the middle of the night and clean. I had no choice. I couldn't sleep knowing that just outside my bedroom was our living room, and just outside our living room was that hallway, and immediately adjacent to that hallway was this.
This is more a presentation of OCD. Something that sticks out is that he could not go to sleep knowing that there was this mess outside his room, outside of the hallway and in Penny's apartment. Most of the time when we talk about OCD, it is debilitating, that it interrupts someone's sleep, it interrupts someone's ability to live life normally or function normally in society, because they get stuck doing all of these compulsions, these behaviors, in order to reduce the anxiety they get from the obsessive thoughts that they have. And here's a clip from Joker.
Why is everybody so upset about these guys? If it was me dying on the sidewalk, you'd walk right over me. I pass you every day and you don't notice me. But these guys, what, because Thomas Wayne cried about them on TV? Everybody just yells and screams at each other. Nobody's civil anymore. Nobody thinks what it's like to be the other guy.
I think we know how that scene ends. I think the most important portrayal here was his neurological disorder, resulting in him laughing whenever he had extremely intense, sad emotions. It's not that this neurological disorder led to him being this way. It is the reaction of society every time this, because we call it a disorder. It is a very sad fact that he has this. The reaction of society around him multiple times, making fun of him, isolating him, not giving him the support, the help that he could get, resulting in this extremely isolated, extremely angry and depressed individual who had a psychotic break. If you have people like this in your life, they could be children, they could be teenagers, they could be adults, older adults, it's important to show empathy and understanding, at least to get knowledge yourself, do a bit of research about what things could be, what help could be given, what support and resources are there in your community or in your society, so that you can provide that for them. A little bit of empathy goes such a long way, because a lot of people do tend to isolate themselves when they're struggling with something. And if they know that there is a support system who can be there for them when they need it, the chances of doing something drastic or impulsive that would harm themselves or others, that chance is drastically lower. Thanks for watching. This has been me, Amanda Xavier, reacting to mental health portrayals in popular TV shows and films. To see the full interview, head on over to Buro247.my.